Excuse me. Does anybody have any questions for the council before we start? I know our huge audience is out there, but if no questions, we'll start in 2 minutes. Yeah, she's down in Vegas. Okay, good afternoon and welcome to the November 18th regular meeting of Council. The City of Parksville recognizes we are gratefully gathered on the traditional territory of the Coast Salish peoples. Before we begin, I'd like to ask Chief Norris to speak briefly about the Parksville Volunteer Fire Department Food and Toy Drive.
Thank you, Your Worship. As you all should be aware, the Parksville Volunteer Fire Department had its 21st annual Food and Toy Drive this past weekend, November 16th and 17th, and I'm happy to say that our group of volunteer firefighters, their families, friends, with the help of some community groups, a couple of counselors, we were able to raise $34,000. And now, today, over 30,000 pounds of food to go to the Salvation Army Food Bank and support them. So very successful. Couldn't have done it without our organizers. One of our captains, Captain Mark Adelberg, is also a city employee, and just very positive outcome. Real big success this year, and a real credit to our members.
Thank you. Chief Norris, on behalf of Council, if you would extend our congratulations and big thanks to the whole of the Parksville Volunteer Fire Department, we'd appreciate it. Is it too late for people to make donations? Since we are appealing to the masses on television here, so we could...
Thank you, Your Worship. It's much appreciated, the support of Council. No, it's not too late. People can still drop by the fire department or to the Salvation Army and make a cash donation or drop off food, or both if they want.
Can they make a check? Or is it just cash?
Well, they can write a check.
Okay.
We'll take a check.
Payable to?
To the Salvation Army.
Salvation Army? Good. Thank you very much. Again, great job, as always. We have the consent agenda coming up for number 1A, B, and C. We have 2 amendments to the agenda this afternoon, namely the addition of 2 motions that were introduced informally by Councillor Chandler for consideration, as well as a removal of the report regarding the fire rescue apparatus. So I need a mover and a seconder for the recommendations of 1A, B, and C. D, E, sorry, I didn't. Moved, seconded by Councillor Chandler, Councillor O'Brien, sorry, I was noticing Councillor Chandler. All those in favor? Opposed, and it's carried. Thank you. Orca Place, community correspondence from Orca Place Community Advisory Committee, support for Handmade for Hope programs. I need a mover and a seconder for receiving the correspondence. Moved by Councillor Wilson, second by Councillor O'Brien. All those in favor of receiving? Opposed? It's carried. And now I understand that there's a council motion coming up. Please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to make a motion to this proposal. Excuse me, I'm a little loud here.
Yeah, can we turn it down just a touch?
Boom. Right. Thank you. So the motion is that council reject the proposal to establish the Handmade for Hope program as submitted, but indicate approval for hobby, fitness, exercise rooms in the former shelter space on the lower floor of 222 Corfield Street South to allow for diverse activities for the benefit of all residents, provided the area is accessed and used by residents of Orca Place exclusively, and that the former shelter space is not used for business use, and that the volunteers use the on-site parking spaces provided at 222 Corfield Street South.
Thank you. Before I ask for a seconder on this, we have to approve unanimously to move this forward because there was no notice of motion on this one. So,
I didn't think we had to. No, we
is there anything out of correspondence? I can get away with that? All right, then. We're okay. Thank you. All right, then I want a seconder for the motion. Councillor Chandler, you're seconding. Discussion. Who would like to speak to it?
So I've made this motion partly because a few reasons. Orca Place is the first of its kind operated by ICCS, and it was designed primarily to provide supportive housing for homeless and to provide an opportunity for wellness and recovery. So I think it's a little more appropriate to put in exercise equipment such as stationary bikes, yoga mats, free weights, hobby, computer sewing that are good for people to get exercise and other activities. And just as an example, Uplands Walk was used as a comparative supportive housing, and the architect there designed an exercise area for wellness for the clients, because really there is nowhere for people here in 222 to go and access all sorts of exercise, which is so good for everybody, never mind just people who are recovering. So also it's only been open for less than 3 months, so I'm not sure I see an urgency to find another use for the empty shelter spaces quickly. Tenants are still being evicted and will be replaced with new tenants, keeping the staff occupied with managing the new facility and settling tenants into their new environment. Visitors are still not allowed, so any possible problems are unknown and to be determined. Security was hired for a 3-month period to manage complaints and issues surrounding the property, so adding more people and activity to the facility increases the possibility for problems. Residents are also concerned about more foot traffic and increased parking needs at 222. At present, the parking lot is more than half full most of the time, and considering future visitor parking requirements, I think this ask is being considered of the surrounding neighborhood.
Do I have any other discussion? Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Your Worship. In response to this motion, I would like to announce my intention of opposing this motion due to a couple reasons here. The fact is that, number one, council is elected to provide the leadership to the community and so forth. It is really not in our place, nor do we have the expertise to be advising businesses or other nonprofits or otherwise in our city on how to run their business regarding what kind of programs they run out of it, quite frankly. We leave that to the experts. That's what we're here for, is to provide the leadership, hire the experts, which in this case has been done by BC Housing. to come up with a program that is suitable for those people. That is not really our jurisdiction, and it's not really up to us to decide what happens or does not happen, as long as they comply with the lease agreements. That's my number one reason for opposing it. Number two would be the fact that we did put out when the ICCS and Heidi was here to do their delegation report. They asked for approval of this program, the Hands for Hope, Hope for Humanity, Hands for Hope, I guess. What is it? Hands, you know what I'm talking about, this program. They asked for our approval on it, and we said that it would be a good idea if they maybe got the approval from the CAC, the neighbor group anyways, to give them approval for this program as proposed. They did have a meeting with the CAC and so forth, and we have a letter here from Heidi from BC Housing advising that they have acceptance from the CAC and a vote that was affirmative to move this program along. So we have that here anyways, advising that the majority of CAC suggested that this be approved. The other problem is the fact that the program as provided, as per the delegation, it was a very worthwhile program, in my opinion, for the fact that it gives these people a way to maybe have some validity in their lives and so forth and get on with their lives, recognizing the fact that the supportive housing project is the support of it means that it has counseling is included in it as a way of helping these people to get back on the treadmill of life as per everybody else, and counseling is a very big part of it. And part of that is to introduce confidence and so forth, and actually even give them a way of maybe having some job creation abilities anyways by following this program anyways. The fact that it's a nonprofit and it's a for-profit organization, that they are going to be actually receiving a small stipend based on the amount of their product that they sell, to me is just a win-win situation for everybody, because it teaches them the value of working for a living, gives them a little bit of extra money that they could actually feel that it's for their families and their friends they could be buying gifts for and that type of thing. So to me, it just feels that it's a win-win for everybody in the community. So I really believe that we can sit back and let them handle this program and let them get on with trying to give these people the best lives that they possibly can. Thank you.
Councillor Greer?
Thank you, Your Worship. I have some mixed feelings. I have no trouble with the motion, but I don't understand all what happens in this home. I believe the understanding was that it would only be the people of that residence that would be working in the home. And from what I gather from others, if this project goes through, there could be other people come from other areas. Maybe I'm wrong on that, I don't know. But I'm sure that we should keep, the people that live there should be the only ones using those facilities. I don't know about the money-making part. I don't see where there's going to be any money made in that area. I think if we had to decide on something, I think a games room, an exercise room, something that they would be more apt to participate in. But at the end of the day, I'd like to get this all behind us, and I don't think we can continue on micromanaging this place. But at this particular point, I wouldn't have any trouble supporting the motion, but sooner or later, we got to get out of this business. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. I do support the motion that was put forward by Councillor Wilson, and particularly that we would be giving them our approval of using that space for other uses like exercise or hobby areas that were mentioned. While we have referred this program to the Community Advisory Committee for the input and to see if they would support it, ICCS and BC Housing have not provided any of that feedback or made any adjustments to concerns raised by their advisory committee or by this council. It makes me question the fact if they're honoring the purpose of having their advisory committee or just giving lip service to it. It's especially heightened by the fact that they were initially bypassing their advisory committee to begin with until being asked by us to bring it to their attention. They are not a decision group, but an advisory committee. So the fact that they reduced it down to a vote, to me, means that they removed their ability to provide input. I required that they have it clearly written in the program that it's exclusively for Orca Place residents and not for any other island crisis care program participants, which, as it's currently written, leaves it open to be interpreted that other people from outside the facility could be utilizing the space, and I strongly oppose this possibility. It's not good enough to simply say so, as there's no guarantee they won't change their mind down the road when promises made are forgotten. It's a simple request with a big distinction. I further question the intention when it states that participants are employed for a limited period of time and not permanently. How do they plan to maintain a program like this on a few number of residents, and who will fill the roles once they've met the time limit? It's also very clear that the intention of this program is to generate a profit for ICCS, with spin-off benefits being pseudo-training business run primarily by volunteers that offer no guarantee wage rate or skill set to the laborers. Basic pre-employment skills are already offered in our community by way of many volunteer positions, and as well, perhaps more importantly, there's already a back-to-work program specifically for Orca Place residents that is being talked about and worked on in Qualcom Beach, with the aim of helping people transition out of Orca Place. There was an article on this in the PQB News on October 16th, where their council voted on looking out for temporary jobs that will give them fair wages and real work experience and references for the resume. It sounds like a much more promising and beneficial situation for the residents, and it wouldn't be competing for resources like volunteers or program workers, which the cold weather shelter organizers are currently struggling with, and the Handmade for Hope program could potentially negatively impact. We've also received feedback from our community that it's too soon to be loading up the workload on Orca Place. And regardless of the details, as they aren't fully operational yet, I have to agree that it would be best to see it running smoothly once the building is full and we see the effects of the security come to an end once their contract is complete. They should aim to remain on the day-to-day operations of the residents and not a profit stream for ICCS. Programs like this are a little more opportunities than nonprofits to access more funding streams. There's nothing stopping them from running this program outside of the facility, and if they feel it's so important to have, there's plenty of commercial space all around to explore, and there's no distinct advantage of having it in Corfield.
Brian, I'm going to, because you've spoke once already, I'm going to go to Councillor Chandler and then back to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a couple of notes that I had as well too. I think that one thing that we have to realize is that this was never, this is not really a normal model for this type of housing. So BC Housing has not really had this type of mixed shelter scenario. So this space was never really intended to be there in the first place, and now it is. And so somebody's trying to find a space filler for that particular location. And I think, because we don't have a YMCA here, we don't have a kind of a drop-in gym at no cost. I think it would be great to have sort of gym-related facilities there. Second to that, I think it's just too early. It's far too early in the mix to put something like this in place and put pressure on the residents. It seems like more of a scenario where they could mentor into something through some volunteers that could potentially pick out the folks that are really interested in getting a business going and actually work with them. Could start doing that now, working towards a future potential business for down the road. I think looking at this as a test period for them to look at doing this business and then maybe coming back to us in 6 months from now might be very worthwhile. Again, my concern is adding more jobs, potentially originally volunteer jobs, but they could turn into more jobs, more unionized jobs, and just keeps driving the cost up of the care and what we spend as BC citizens. And so obviously that's going through provincial mandate as far as costing and so on. So that's really, I just wanted to mention those points, and for that reason I will support the motion put forward today. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to clarify, Councillor Greer's position about whether it's going to be for Orca Place residents only, I have an email here from Heidi. I asked that very same question. I was concerned about that as well. And Heidi Hartman has confirmed that it is only for Orca Place residents only, this program. She did advise, though, that the program itself is a template that's been copied from other areas that has been successful. And so the thing is, but this is going to be exclusively for Orca Place only. She's confirmed that. I have the email, and I can copy it over to you if you wish after we finish the meeting here. The other thing is that to suggest that it's going to be a profit stream for ICCS, anybody that's been in business would realize that there's the profit stream when all things are considered, if you consider overhead and management wages and so forth and materials and so forth, I'm sure that the profit stream for ICCS, once you paid out the stipend to the Orca Place residents, there would be nil to nothing, because it's just not possible in a situation like this, no matter how many dryer balls you sell. So I don't believe it's going to be a huge profit stream for ICCS. And to the mention anyways that the residents need to be ready for this. I believe that the residents it's on a volunteer basis type of thing. It's not a mandatory requirement that they have to go to this. It's actually a program to help them, as I say, get confidence in life type of thing. And it's not as if they're going to be under great pressure to attend this. So. That's all I have addressed to what I've heard today so far. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Your Worship. So I just want to say that I understand the points that Councillor O'Brien's making, and it's not so much that that I'm against the business model so much as I'm not sure why they need a business. I question that aspect of it, when they can have sewing machine rooms, they can have hobbies, they could have exercise equipment. It can all be very low key for everyone to use. I think the way the proposal is set out is it's very specific for only certain people. Only certain people can access it. So it's not everyone. And so that's the big issue, is why does this have to be a business? And why can't it just be rooms that are set up for everybody's uses? And anybody can do a craft and sell it down at the market. They don't need to have a business plan for it. So I still think that to offer facilities for recreation for everybody to use is much more beneficial to the people. And they can still bring in volunteers, and they can make a dryer ball if they want, but I don't see, they're looking for funding specifically for this, and I'm just not sure I really believe that's the best interest of everybody. Thanks.
I'm going to ask one more time, and then I'm going to make my comment, and then we'll put it up for a vote. So, Councillor Fraz, did you have another one? Councillor O'Brien, if it's a quick one.
Thank you, Chair, to Your Worship. Just a reflection to Councillor Wilson's question. The business model was necessary for them to receive funding, and they need funding to pay for the manager that would run this program, and that's why they did a business model. That's the way it is in these days. You have to have a business model. So that's to answer your question, why they need it that way.
That was a good point. Okay, Councillor Fraz.
So just adding to that then too, he's right that it is, like I mentioned, access funding. And this is why when you say that there's not much profit to be made, there's no losses for them, because all of their expenses are covered through their grant funding. So anything they make becomes strict profit for them, and then they're only taking a small portion of that to give as a stipend. So it's not paying a wage, it's not paying a minimum wage to the people who are working. It's using them as laborers, and then all their expenses covered through their grants.
Okay. No, I think we've gone through it enough on this one. I have a question first to the Director of Planning. What's the zoning for this? And does it allow it?
If I may, Your Worship, it has a site-specific zoning. I believe, I don't recall the exact CD zoning number. It does allow for training. So it does allow for facilitate training type activities. The zone doesn't have commercial as a permitted use, but it does allow for training activities. So what that would mean is if any items were produced as part of training, I believe that they would have to be retailed off premise somewhere else.
There is the professional opinion. Thank you, and I'm getting a second here from the CAO as well. Just to start things off here, I think both sides of this argument, the points are well taken. I have only one objection to it, and that's why I will be voting against the motion, in the fact that we're getting into the weeds for the operations of this. It's none of our business. We rent them the land or gave them the land to put their project on, and how they handle it and what they do, as long as they are within the zoning that they're allowed, and that's why I asked for that question, as long as they're within the zoning that is allowed, they're legal. And if it's legal, then we shouldn't be in the middle of this one. Just because, you know, I know why we're doing this, I know why we're having these discussions, and the arguments are good. If it was my decision, I wouldn't have put this in either. I would have put exactly what Councillor Wilson has suggested with exercise equipment and such. But we can't start making decisions all the way along for other organizations for everything just because we're involved with the property. That's just how I see it. So I'm not going to beat this to death. Everybody knows how I feel about it. So I'm going to, I will call the vote now. So all those in favor of the motion? 1, 2, 3, 4. Opposed? To 2. It carries. Thank you. It was a good discussion. Councillor Fraz?
If I may, rising out of this correspondence as well for Orca Place, I have another motion I'd like to put forward.
Okay, we'll hear the motion and then we'll decide whether we postpone or move it till next week or this.
Okay, so I'd like to make a motion to request from BC Housing and Island Crisis Care Society, they report to council a breakdown of Orca Place program participant demographics using the same metrics that were used in the 2018 homeless count, including percentage of age groups and genders, percentage with physical disabilities, medical issues, mental health issues, and drug addictions, as well as number of how many were previously sheltered and how many were previously unsheltered.
Do I have a seconder for that? Oh, wait a minute. Before we do that, we have to vote on whether we're going to have a unanimous decision to carry it forward or to take it today. So all in favor of discussing and working on this motion today? Opposed?
I'll go along with it.
It's a unanimous decision? Okay, fair enough. I need a seconder before we go any further. Seconded by Councillor Greer. Now, please, feel free.
Okay, so as I mentioned in the motion, these are using the same metrics from the 2018 homeless count that was done prior to the opening of supportive housing at 222 Corfield Street, so that we can get a better sense of what this facility is doing and as a follow-up to the impact supportive housing has made to our homeless count. There's no private information being asked that would identify any individual. This is simply to gain a clear picture of what needs are being addressed as stakeholders in this facility. The homeless count was continually referenced and leaned on as a reason why supportive housing is important to have in our community and operating at the specific location on city-owned land. We are involved with this facility, and I think we should be asking questions and be measuring the impacts along the way. Furthermore, while this is continually termed a homelessness issue, I think it's important to recognize to what degree people who are experiencing homelessness have been brought into the facility. We have to be able to know if what's going on is working rather than just hoping the problem will be resolved because a nonprofit is given funds and space to operate. I consider this a due diligence and follow through on our part.
Anybody else have anything to say? Well, that was pretty quick. We'll call the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? Just me. Councillor O'Brien didn't vote, so he's in favor. It's a positive. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That's it. It was carried. Thank you very much. Next correspondence, Parksville and District Historical Society are asking for our approval because we have to, again, for a major landscaping work at the museum. They provided us with all the drawings and everything else. So first off, I need a mover and a seconder for receiving. Moved by Councillor Greer, seconded by Councillor Wilson. Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. All right. Reports. Mr. Russell, would you? Pardon me? Oh, I don't have that here. Okay. All right. So I'm getting handed all over the place that they would like a motion not only to receive, but they want to, I will give you the motion that in accordance with the terms of the lease agreement, council approved the request from the Parksville and District Historical Society to undertake the Courtyard landscaping project as identified in the correspondence dated November 12, 2019 at the Parksville Museum located at 1245 Island Highway East. I'll move that. I need a seconder. Councillor O'Brien, discussion on this? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Okay. Oh, that's all right. All right. Now we'll go to Mr. Russell. Mr. Russell, could you please just give us a background on the next item?
Certainly, if I may, Worship, for council consideration this afternoon is issuance of a development permit at 126 Maple Crescent. The subject property is located within the wildfire interface development permit area. The purpose of this DPA is to protect development from potentially hazardous conditions that may result from wildfire hazards near forest areas. In this particular case, should the development permit be approved, it will enable the construction of a 2-story accessory carriage house on the subject property. Staff have reviewed the application and believe efforts have been made to be in compliance with the applicable development permit area guidelines, and therefore the recommendations are as per the agenda to issue the development permit.
Thank you. I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Fraz, seconded by Councillor Wilson. Are there any discussions? Councillor Fraz?
Just want to say that I'm happy to see a development permit come forward for a carriage home like this. I think it's a good use to add a mix of housing to our community. Even though being in the wildfire interface management area, I don't have any concern with this particular one. I think it's in good hands, and I'm happy to see it before us. Yeah, I'm sure he has a garden hose. Thank you.
All right. Anybody else? I will call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Mrs. Weeks, would you give us the background on the next issue?
So the purpose of this report is to officially name the 3 roadways within the Parksville Community Park. Short-term priority identified in the Parks, Trails, and Open Spaces Master Plan was to install consistent signage in all city parks to identify them as public spaces with addresses for emergency responses. Assigning names to the community park will assist in the short-term priority as well as for the safety of visitors to the park, for clarity of location as well as to promote wayfinding in accordance with the Parksville Downtown Business Association. The PDBA has begun production of the new wayfinding signs, including new signage in the community park. Because naming of the streets is time sensitive to meet production deadlines, staff recommends option 1, and recommendation is as per the council agenda.
Thank you. I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Wilson, second by Councillor Chandler. Any discussion? I'm very disappointed they didn't have a Main Street in there, but that's okay. Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just on the questioning of the names of these streets, I only would like to reference under Salish Seaway. I know from personal experience there's another Seaway in Parksville. Seaway Drive is located down in the east end of Parksville. I'm just concerned that there could be some confusion with the name Salish Seaway. Only because Seaway Drive already exists. So I'm just, for emergency services and so forth, is that a possible confusing issue? That's my only comment on that.
thank you for your comment. Let me ask the pros, if I could. Chief, is this a concern?
We did vet the names, and I don't have a particular concern with it. I do agree that there is a Seaway Drive in Parksville. The alternate would be to just call it Salish Way and drop the C. So there's a couple of options there. If council considers that that's going to be an issue.
Mrs. Kaler wants to...
If I may, Your Worship, we chose the word Salish Sea because it is a geographical name for the strait. We didn't want to go with Coast Salish or Salish Way without seeking approval from First Nations. But in this case, given the urgency, we could recommend perhaps changing it to Salish Sea Drive or Road or something like that. I think that would be no problem, but we wanted to stick with a formal geographical name so there's no controversy with that name.
Chief.
Your Worship, it just occurred to me that I believe Seaway is all one word in the other name of the road, and in this particular case, it's Salish Sea and then Drive. So there are significant differences, as well as the addressing would be quite different. So that would be a clear indicator of which was which.
Thank you. Councillor O'Brien?
Thank you, Your Worship. And just comments from our CAO. Yes, exactly. It's listed here. We have Sandcastle Drive, then we have Ravenhill Road, and then Salish Sea Way. So this all could be solved, I believe, by our CAO's suggestion if we went to Salish Sea Drive. Mission accomplished.
Am I hearing an amendment to the motion? A friendly amendment?
I would like to make a friendly amendment to the number 2 portion of this. If we change the last name of the listed roads as to from Salish Sea Way, changing it to Salish Sea Drive.
Thank you. I need a seconder for that. Councillor Wilson? Is there a discussion on this? All right. All those in favor of the amendment? Opposed? It's carried. All right. So now we're back to the vote on the amended motion. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. I got my main motion. I did. Smart. Go ahead. The results of the pool multiplex feasibility study, please.
Thank you, if I may, Your Worship. Before council is a rundown of the results of the RFP that was put out earlier in the fall. City staff have reviewed a number of proposals and provided additional details to council offline because of the proprietary nature of RFPs. There were 2 clear bids that were ranked significantly higher than the others. A large part of the reason why the first bid was ranked so high is that there was very clear evidence to the panel that the folks had clearly read not only the RFP, but had looked into a series of recreational processes, public consultation, numerous studies that had been done in the region, and it felt to the panel unanimously that there was a fair amount of context and background that the other proposals didn't really clearly identify. Some of the proposals were really just a regurgitation of the RFP requirements, which is okay, but that's really what set the proposal from HDR Architecture's associates ahead. It was also the lowest bid. So what happens in these cases is we open the fee envelopes for the 2 top ranked proposals, and we have to choose the lowest one unless there's a very clear reason why that one wouldn't be the best option. In this case, staff feels that we might be able to eliminate one of the areas that was asked for comparative analysis, just because it doesn't provide enough space to go with the full scope if council wanted to do the multiplex and the outdoor areas. And we feel pretty confident that we can negotiate with these folks to get the cost down within the budget, which has been established at $75,000. And recommendations are per the agenda.
I need a mover and a seconder for the recommendations. Councillor Wilson, Councillor Greer has seconded. Discussion. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to say I've read the, one of the proposals. It's very professional, well done, very clear, and really outlines a path going forward. So I think it's a really good choice. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Fraz, then Councillor O'Brien.
Through the mayor to staff, the question is just with, as far as the locations, are these proposals, are they going to be just looking at the selected locations, or are they open to other possibilities based on what the facility might need?
Thank you, if I may, Your Worship. We would essentially identify two areas, that being the area near Springwood Park at the end of Despard, and the other area being down near the Works Yard. But we would indicate, I believe, to the consultant during the initiation meeting that there is certainly a willingness from council to look at other sites that make sense. The reason why we chose those two sites initially, and the third as well, is that they are already city-owned. But it may make more sense once council sees the scope and decides exactly what kind of items they want to take off the menu, to look at other options. There are obviously vacant lands that are privately owned that council could look into. But at this point, we're hoping to get an understanding of what the generic needs would be for, say, a pool of a certain size, or an arena of a certain size, or those kinds of uses. And then I think council would be in a great position to look at whether they want to acquire additional land or use land that's already city-owned. There are other city-owned lands also that were not put forward that could be rezoned for this use as well.
Councillor Francis, a follow-up?
As a follow-up there, would we be able to request from them their opinion or recommendation on what type of land we might also consider too, just so we can have their kind of viewpoint of what would work well?
If I may, Your Worship, absolutely, yeah, staff will do that.
Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through Your Worship to the CAO. Well done on the process here so far. Your grading process is exceptional. But just a question anyways, as I understand it now, if we pass this anyways today, it's going to go back and you're going to do your best to negotiate down to the $75,000, which was approved. I hope that that can be achieved as it is, and you're trying to soften that blow by removing one lot's site location study. However, my question is we included this as a swimming pool and multiplex feasibility study. And the thing is that we all know that the swimming pool is what we really want and need type of thing and so forth. I'm just wondering if adding that multiplex to the mix type of thing adds a substantial amount of consultant time and energy to use that type of thing. If it was possible to have the consultant that you've identified as the key player here, if the multiplex requirements or consulting was dropped from that, would they be able to do it within our budget and just provide the swimming pool? Because I think really the swimming pool has to be the first factor that we know it's going to be a lot of money. And the thing is that if the multiplex is kind of like, and possibly a multiplex or something like that, but they don't have to spend as much time on it because the swimming pool is really the key component, in my opinion.
Go ahead.
If I may, Your Worship, we can certainly discuss that informally, but if council wishes to more formally eliminate the multiplex, I would request a motion to do that. But what I might suggest is that if staff can address the issues with the person first, and then we can report back and let you know, like maybe it's not that much of a difference because they would be doing the public consultation and other things anyway. But if council agrees, we could start the conversation with them and then come back to council with a better sense of, if it's going to be $45,000 to eliminate the multiplex, then I think council would have to give us a resolution to narrow the scale that much. But I think it would be helpful if we can get a sense from the consultant what the difference would be, if that's okay with council.
Follow up.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through to the CAO as well. I would think to make me feel a little better, could you at this time refresh just quickly what the description to the consultant was, what a multiplex looked like, or what we were asking in the multiplex? I'm fully aware of the pool, but the multiplex portion, I'm not sure that I'm clear.
If I may, Your Worship, I'll try to remember all of the items, but essentially what we had put in the RFP terms were things like if it was an 8-lane track or a 6-lane track, what kind of parking spaces would be required, what kind of land area are we looking at. We also included things about multi-purpose indoor space. So if we went with different types of materials and different types of building options, like a metal building versus wooden building versus prefab kind of Quonset hut, and we had a space that could allow for 2 basketball courts, I think it was 6 volleyball courts, 8 pickleball courts, something like that. So there were some metrics out there that if you have a space big enough, you can have multiple uses in there, but if you go below a certain threshold, then you can pretty much only have 1 basketball game or 1 volleyball game at a time. So there was those kinds of metrics where what we have seen in other proposals when they come back is almost like a menu, for want of a better description, where it shows, you need X square footage for a gym of multi-purpose size, X number of parking spaces, X number of change room square footage. So a lot of it, I think, would be things that there are some parameters out there in an architecture world where they can kind of do a formula and give us that information. And then some of the other items were things like reaching out to the community, where perhaps it wouldn't really change the cost if you're asking about both uses. Because if you're meeting with stakeholder groups to talk about a pool, you'd probably be meeting with the same stakeholder groups to talk about recreation as well. So there might be some efficiencies there, but I think it would be really helpful for us to talk to this consultant and get a breakdown of where that would go.
Councillor Chandler, and then I'll come back to you.
Thank you, through your worship, to CAO Kiva Killer. Thank you, Kiva. You answered most of my questions. I was just going to ask a lot about, what the differences would be in that respect. So, but I think, as a build on this product, we really need to look at the future of a large, full-blown facility. It would be fantastic for our community and surrounding communities as well. And I would just like to say maybe a free lifetime membership to the RFP guys, if just as a thought. So, thank you.
Councillor O'Brien.
Just for further clarity, I'm trying to picture this in my mind here, so bear with me if you will. If a track was identified as part of this multiplex, if a track was identified, whether it was a 6-lane or 8-lane, do you think that's a wise move at this time? Because at this particular time, the school board have actually started Belena's track steering committee at this time, which meetings are starting next week. So it would be studied by 2 consultants, if I may, at this particular point. So I'm not sure that a track maybe should, an 8-lane track or 6-lane track should be part of our study at this point, or at least until their study has been concluded. And the fact that recognizing the track and field track takes up a lot of real estate right away, and so it's definitely going to have a factor on where we locate our swimming pool. So just, I'm not sure that we should be considering the track at this portion part of our multiplex. My comments. Thank you.
Councillor Frass.
It's relating to a track. A feature that I saw at the facility was an indoor walking track. It was only just a 2-lane. It went around the upper portion of a gym space, and that type of inclusion I think would be great, so that there's an indoor space for people to be mobile during poor weather and winter time and so on. Thanks.
Okay. Councillor Wilson, then I'll speak.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Just a quick comment. I'm going to say that the advantage to including a wider range of activities right at the outset can be beneficial, just to get a sense of what we need, and then we can always draw back. And I believe when I read that proposal, that what made it so good is that he divided it up in a way that we could drop things out or add things in, but we need an overall picture first. So I always think it's better to take a look at everything, and I think there are many meetings planned that we can then change that option.
The AO would like to speak again.
Sorry, if I may, Your Worship, Councillor Wilson makes a very good point. The initial step was actually to do a needs analysis, and so to look at the history of all of the consultation that's gone already and make sure that that doesn't get lost, and then do basically a needs analysis on the community's recreational gaps. So I think it would be helpful to, have that first, and we can certainly put things on hold if we're getting the same information already from another source.
For my 2 cents worth, I think you have to start at the top and then start cutting back as we start seeing price points. If you start at the bottom, it's kind of like when I built my house, and my wife said, oh no, we don't need that. And then as we kept going, we kept adding and adding. Well, it's $1 to take it out, and it's $3 to put it back in again. And so I think at this point in time, let's go with what the ultimate would be. Let them decide what they're suggesting. Then we can sit down and pick it apart at that point in time. We don't know. I mean, they may come back and say it's $100 million and there's no way in God's earth, we can put together financing it, and it may be an answer. So I think at this point, we let them come up with their answers before we start to worry about what's in there, and then we'll go from there. But I think we'll all have our chances to evaluate. I do agree that, if we're already building one set of track, we go from 0 tracks to 2 tracks is kind of silly, so we'll have to look at that. Anyways, I'll call the question so we can move forward, if you could. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. The rescue apparatus replacement has been removed from the agenda, as we said. And Chief, would you give us the next item? You had 2 of them on here.
Thank you, Your Worship. The revision of Council Policy 9.2, Fire Department Honorariums and Standby Pay, is to improve equity and enhance retention of on-call members. This is something that's been on the radar for about 3 years now, and we didn't get to it, unfortunately, last year. It is budgeted for, and we're hoping that Council will approve this as per the recommendations.
I just want to make a comment here that the annual bonus honorarium is something that I'm happy to see there. I think this is a good way to incentivize better attendance out of it. So it was a neat addition into it that I hadn't seen before.
Sorry. Does any member of council have a notice of motion? Do we? No? It's okay. All right. Motions from previous meetings. Councillor Chandler, could you please give us the background on the issue regarding grant funding for crime prevention?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I would like to make a motion, or the background on the motion. I would like to talk about looking to be able to recover some funds or seek funds for crime prevention within the community. I think it's a big hot topic subject right now, and I think that there is monies available out there for different projects. Sometimes the projects are masked as under different umbrellas, but those umbrellas can widen open, and there's some available funding within those same structures to be able to use for more patrolling, more equipment, making a volunteer group better financed, better equipped, and so on and so forth. And when I speak of that, I speak, of course, of the Oceanside Community Safety Group here, and as well any kind of enhancements we can do with anybody that can help the RCMP, or any equipment that can help the RCMP that we could offer. But that would be what I'd like to see.
Do you have your motion in front of you?
I do not, no.
Okay, I will read it for you.
Thank you.
Okay. Recommendation that staff be directed to follow up on any grants or funding available to assist with crime prevention and rising crime in our city. Moved by Councillor Chandler, seconded by Councillor Wilson. Discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Councillor Chandler, keep going.
Thank you, Worship. Yes, I don't have the motion in front of me again, but thank you, Your Worship, thank you. Thank you. All right, so the staff be directed to begin the process of a public meeting, town hall style, to discuss the large increase of crime in the area. We would invite local, provincial, and federal government employees to engage in the citizens, or with the citizens of Parksville, to discuss options and possible solutions. Thank you.
I like the idea of having a town hall session. I think it's a little bit different than what we've seen of committee of the wholes, where we make recommendations to council, but just to have that open dialogue between the community and create ideas, and perhaps we could, on top of community safety, find some other topics that might be of interest to the community to add into there. But I definitely think it's town hall is overdue, and it would be wonderful to see.
Thank you. Somebody, Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Your Worship. I think this is an excellent idea, a good motion, and I will support it.
Councillor O'Brien and then Councillor Chandler.
Thank you, Your Worship. If I could just have maybe Councillor Chandler and just elaborate a little more, like are the RCMP going to be attending this as well, or is it just going to be like a town council, just with council as we hear, or are there going to be special guest speakers, that type of thing?
Thank you, Worship. Through to Councillor O'Brien. Myself and Councillor Fraz recently attended a meeting similar to this in Nanaimo, and it was a very interesting meeting. They had speakers from the city, they had the RCMP there, they had volunteer patrol groups, they had volunteers that look after connecting with the homeless, outreach people. It was a very, very interesting format. I think for us, what we want to do is we want to invite everybody that's important to be there. We need everybody there to talk about this subject. And one of the things I think that this kind of opportunity gives us is a chance to talk about what we can do to prevent crime. There's so much preventable crime, and locking our doors and just shoring up our homes, making sure that we don't allow for crime that can just be basically people coming through the area and seeing opportunities. Opportunistic crime is very expensive for everybody. I myself have spent thousands of dollars on camera systems for my business, put up fencing around my home, and put in alarm system in my home, just simply because I want to make sure that I'm safe and my family's safe. So that's part and parcel of it, and Councillor O'Brien will make sure that we get some input from all of council here as far as who do we want to see there. I would love to see that, so thank you.
Just very quickly, excellent idea. I think the public will enjoy this. It's overdue. So having said all that, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Okay, under new business, I have to ask council to bear with me. I have two motions that I would like to introduce. They're very short ones, but they've been hanging around for a long time and way overdue. So I would like to get these on this afternoon's agenda and handled with, if you could do that. So the first one is on water pressure issues on Butler. Just to give you a quick analysis of what happened here, is the water pressure on that street is exceptionally high. Most of the houses back in the day, 10 or 15 years ago or whenever it was, received notice, and they handled by putting in the reducing valves, pressure reducing valves on it. But apparently 2 houses were missed for whatever reason. They were never notified. We have no proof that they were done, and their water pressure is still at in the mid-90s, and when you turn the water on, the pipes rattle, and the people are afraid that there's going to be issues here. So what we have decided is that we would like to propose that we agree to provide to the two owners of the houses up to $500 to engage a professional plumber to install the pressure-reducing valve on each of the houses. It's the right thing to do for us, so that's what I'm making that motion. I would like a seconder, seconded by Councillor Greer. Yes. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I just blew right past that part, didn't I? My apologies. I was thinking ahead. So, yes, we'll vote on whether you will give me consideration to bring up both motions. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay. Now, we'll go back to the vote on
Can we read it so that it's not maybe more than those two? We
oh,
obviously have these conditions, so if it's anybody else.
okay. The whole thing? All right, let me read you the recommendation. The council approve reimbursing a maximum of up to $500 to residents when they are required to install a pressure-reducing valve on their property subject to the following conditions. The city cannot prove adequate notice was given to the neighborhood at the time of installation of high-pressure water mains. The resident has provided legitimate invoices for the cost to engage a professional plumber to install the pressure-reducing valve. The subject property is located in an area identified by the city as a high-pressure zone. And that's it. So those are them. So, yeah, and this will carry on throughout the city if we run into this, which is the right thing to do. All right? Did we get a seconder? Yeah, Councillor Greer seconded it. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. And my second motion that's coming up today, in May of 2019, the city contracted some work to be done beside Mrs. Rockhill's property on Roscoe. There was an error made which resulted in Mrs. Roscoe's tree being removed without her permission. In addition, during the landscaping and clearing work, significant amount of debris fell into her private yard and swimming pool, requiring cleaning and replacement of materials for which Mrs. Rockhill has submitted receipts. Mrs. Rockhill was also denied the use of her pool for a portion of the summer months. Staff have been working with the contractor to try and seek remedies to compensate the homeowner, but the process is taking a very long time, and Mrs. Rockhill is unfairly being caught in the middle. So we want the city to pay for it, and then we will continue to go back after the contractor in this case. So my recommendation is that the staff be directed to reimburse Mrs. Rockhill for $800 in recognition of the costs she incurred, and that this amount be taken from the council contingency. I need a seconder. Oh, no, we did it for both at the same time. Yeah, we did it for, see, I'm one ahead of you this time. Councillor Wilson is seconding it. Any discussion? Councillor Chandler?
Thank you, Worship. Through your worship to CEO Kiva Keller, I just wanted to check and see, is this a contractor that we've dealt with before in the past? Do we have any history of this contractor?
To the acting director.
If I may, through your worship, to Councillor Chandler. Yes, it's a contractor that does quite a bit of work, mainly right now they've been doing work through development files, but they're well known and have a good reputation generally with the city. It's just some work that happened very early on in the season, and it's sometimes difficult to prove absolute causation when we're dealing with insurance companies and whatnot, and we're kind of as Kiva and his worship explained, we're caught in the middle there where we're trying to make things kind of fair and reasonable, and keeping within the scale of the claim.
Thank you very much. That answers my question.
Yeah. Councillor Frass?
I just want to say I think that's very unfortunate that her tree was removed, and I can imagine how upsetting that it was to the homeowner. I hope that this would be enough to make amends with her. Has there been any indication that she accepts our apology and that this would satisfy her?
She's sitting right here.
Yeah, so my deep apologies
Are-
to them.
What he's asking, are you happy with that settlement of the $800? That is, which is what we talked about. Done.
Okay, so
We'll add that to our motion, okay?
thank you.
Thank you. All right, I would like to call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you very much. Thank you for your patience, Linda. All right, does any member of council have any new business? Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to let all council know anyways, I attended the grand opening session for the bell ringer program from the Salvation Army last week for the Christmas program coming up. So what they're doing is they're out there getting their kettle crews out there. And so my mention of this at this time for this very worthwhile endeavor that they do every year is they're currently looking for volunteers to man the bells as they are. So there's still lots of shifts available, and if anybody here or anybody listening out there in TV land would be needing more information, they could contact myself. I have the information here, and there's lots of shifts available. So just letting it known that they're out there, that the volunteers are still needed. Thank you.
We can talk. I wouldn't mind doing at least one shift. All right. So with a Santa hat, she says, now are we starting? Okay. Any other new business on here, Councilor Fraz?
I just want to extend a thanks to Councillor Chandler for heading the cooking this weekend at the fire department's food drive that we heard about earlier. It was fantastic meals. He's quite a chef. He makes it so much fun, and we're still curious of what the secret ingredients are to that meatloaf. Bacon.
All right. If there's nothing else new, then we're going to go on to, I need a mover and a seconder for the recommendation of pursuant to section 91C and E, I should put my glasses on, and K of the Community Charter. Council proceed to a closed meeting to consider items relating to labor, the proposed provision of municipal services, and land. All right, I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Wilson, seconded by Councillor O'Brien. All those in favor? All right, 5 minutes, and then we'll switch over to, it was pretty good. I called it at 3.